Ok, clase, para este video vamos a hablar sobre los verbos irregulares en el pretérito. So we're going to talk about irregular verbs in the preterite tense, which is the past tense, which is what we've been learning the past couple days. For this video, I'm only going to show you a couple of the irregular verbs. There are a lot of irregular verbs. You've already been introduced to a few. And so I'm going to show you how to conjugate those in the preterite tense. And on this video, I'm going to show you or remind you how to conjugate them in the present tense as well. And then there's going to be one or two verbs in here in this video that you don't know, but that you're going to know now. Here we go. The first two verbs that I want you to know how to conjugate in the past tense for the preterite is ir, which means to go, the Dora the Explorer verb, and ser, obviously to be. That's the very first verb we were ever introduced to. Now, both of these verbs are irregular verbs, and they're irregular in the preterite tense as well, so both present and preterite tense. I want you to note that they have the same forms when you conjugate them. So you can determine the difference in meaning by the context of the sentence. So let's first look at the conjugations, and then we can look at some example sentences in order for you to tell which one means what in the given context. Okay? So ser means to be, just as a reminder, ir to go, and this is how you conjugate both of them in the preterite tense. Fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fueron. And here they are on the side. For ser, fui would mean I was, fuiste, you were, fue, he or she was, fuimos, we were, fueron, they were. Ir, fui would mean I went, fuiste, you went, fue, he or she, whoops. Okay, all three of these need to say went. He or she went, fuimos, we went, and fueron, they went. Sorry, all of this should mean went. So don't copy these three down in your notes like this. Okay, now notice again, all of them for ser and ir, they all look the same. So how do you know when to use each one or what they look like in a given sentence? You're going to know by the context, and I'll show you in a minute. But let's look at the actual conjugations of them for a minute. Your preterite tense endings for IR and ER verbs were iste, io, imos, ieron. So notice they're kind of similar, but a little bit different. Why? Because it's an irregular verb. Ser is irregular, ir is regular, which means they don't follow the regular pattern of verbs when you conjugate them. Okay, so irregular verbs you just have to memorize. So memorize how to conjugate ser right here and ir in the past tense. Here's some example sentences. Yo fui a la playa y él fue también. I went to the beach and he went too. So right here we're using the verb ir. If we were using ser right here, or if we thought this could mean ser, it wouldn't make sense because it would read I was to the beach and he was too. That didn't make sense to put was right there, even though it could mean was or were. So we have to use went. The next sentence, I was president, or yo fui presidente y él fue vicepresidente. I was president and he was vice president. Okay, so by the given context clues of the sentence, you'll be able to tell whether it's the verb ser or ir. Okay, memorize how to conjugate them. Here's some other important irregular verbs in the present and preterite that I want you to learn how to conjugate. This is a new verb to you guys. Oír. Oír means to hear. Different than escuchar, which means to listen, okay? Here's how you conjugate it in the present tense. And here's how you pronounce them. Practice them with me. Oigo. Oyes. Oye. Oímos. Oyen. In the past tense, oí. Oíste. Oyo. Oímos. Oyeron. Okay? Now notice this verb and the next verb on the next slide, they follow the same pattern, so they're going to look very similar. Let's look at it. In the present, leer means to read. In the present, leo, lees, lee, leemos, leyen. in the preterite. Leí, leíste, leyó, leímos, leyeron. Again, this follows the same pattern as this verb. Compare them side by side. They look the same. Here's another verb that I want you to memorize in the preterite. Tener. We know how to conjugate that in the present, but here it is in the preterite, the past. Tuve, tuviste, tuvo, tuvimos, tuvieron. And this verb follows the same pattern as poder and estar, which means to be able to and to be. On the next slides, let's look at it. Pude, pudiste, pudo, pudimos, pudieron. I was able to, you were able to, or this just translates to I can. Like, I can do this. You could do this. He or she was able to, we were able, they were able to. And then estar, which means to be as well. Estuve, estuviste, estuvo, estuvimos, estuvieron. Now note, just a little side note, the verb estar, it's an AR verb, but it takes on IR and ER endings. That's just one of those irregular verbs that do that. Okay? Here's the happy face, because it's the end of this PowerPoint. So there are a whole lot of more irregular verbs in Spanish, but for now, I just want you to memorize and copy those particular ones down. Copy the present tense and the preterite tense of each of those verbs. Why? Because I want you to notice or compare them side by side, and you have to memorize them. They're irregular. They don't follow the normal pattern, so you just have to memorize them. And those verbs are so important. You use them all the time when speaking Spanish or in English, just in everyday conversation. So memorize them. Memorize, memorize, memorize. That's all I can tell you for that. I'll give you a list with more verbs on it in order to help you for the future, but for now, memorize those for Monday and be ready for a note check or quiz. Adios!